We're about to learn all about the shape tool in Photoshop. Let's get started on making our shapes in Photoshop. So, the first thing that you need to do is know where the shape tool is. So when you come right down here, this rectangle tool, this is the first shape that we're going to go over. Here are some of the other shapes. And so the first thing that you need to know is you can make a rectangle shape, and the most common one that I make is actually just filling in an entire canvas. If I'm being honest, that is the most commonly used shape tool that I use, and I just fill it in. So let's say you were wanting to put some other shapes on the top of this. Now that this is the canvas, I'll teach you a little bit more. So when we come up here, this is where you would change the color of your shape. And because down here, we are on this rectangle, it affects the color of the shape that we change it to. So let's go ahead and draw a new rectangle on the top of this rectangle just by selecting the rectangle tool and then drawing a rectangle. So now that we just drew this rectangle, you can't see it. So we have to come back up here. We have to choose the color. And now this is what we have. And when we made that new rectangle, it made it as a layer on the top of this other layer. Now that we have this rectangle, we can come over here to this stroke section. So right now, when I just created a stroke and I made sure that it wasn't filled in right here up at the top, you can see this. Make sure that it's not filled in. So this would mean that there's no stroke. Checking this changed right here and it made it so that you can see that there is a stroke. But what amount of pixels? Right now it's at 5. If we adjust this and bring it up, the stroke is a lot bigger now. For this example, you can bring it down. You can also adjust the stroke size right here as well by just hovering over the stroke name and dragging your mouse to the right and left. So now that the stroke, you understand a bit about the stroke, the other thing that you can understand is that when you are making your fill, you can do this similar thing where you remove the color. And so right now we just have a border or a stroke on the outside. So now that you know that, another thing to know is that when you do U on your keyboard, it brings up the rectangle tool. And so just now, I just created another rectangle with the exact same settings as my last rectangle. If I want to change the settings, I just come back up here and change them. Since we're speaking about shortcuts, and I just told you about the shortcut U on your keyboard that brings up whichever shape you use last, that would make it so that that would be the most recent thing that I do. So the next thing that I can do, so now that I clicked on the circle, I am on a circle shape, and let's say that I want to make it a perfect circle. Right now it can be more of an ellipse. If I want to make it a perfect circle, all I have to do is press Shift on my keyboard. And just like that, I made a perfect circle. One cool thing about the shape tool in Photoshop is actually that you can make it any size you want. So these are all vector shapes. They're vector images, which means that you can scale them to any size and they're not going to lose their quality. So if I were to go and I would make my canvas a lot bigger, I'm going to show you that right now. So I could use my crop tool and I can make my canvas much bigger. Just drag it out. I press enter on my keyboard. And let's say that I want to make this circle just as big. You can look at this, and as you can tell, it is pretty sharp. It is really high quality. So now let's say that I wanted to do that same thing, but before I scale it up, I turned my circle, my vector circle, into just a normal layer. I rasterized it. So that just makes it so that I can't really keep editing it, and it keeps it at whatever size you rasterize it at. So I just rasterized it. So I did that by clicking on the layer with my right clicker, and then I just clicked rasterize layer. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to do Control T, because you can still scale it up. It's just going to lose a lot of the same quality that it had. So now I make it the full size. And as you can tell, there is just a lot more pixels than there were before. And it's not nearly as clear as the last version that we had. Another thing within shapes, so this is almost acting like a border. I can do Control T, and I can just change the shape. I can make it a custom border around this entire canvas. I press enter. So let's say that I was wanting this border or this stroke right here to be a different type of border. So that's where this comes in right here. You can do different options for your stroke. So I can make it a circle stroke, I can make it a line stroke, or just the one that we originally had. And there's lots of options that you can do within this. You can align it, you can add caps. So let's say that I like that and I want to change the gaps to be a bit bigger. I can make the gaps wider apart. I can even bring all of this in a bit so that you can see the circles. You can move the circles as well on the line. So this right here shows you if you want your circles to be on the inside of your line, if you want it to be on the middle of the line, or on the outside of the line. So did you see how those three changed? You would change that right here. But let's go ahead and keep our plain stroke. And I'm going to show you right here within the stroke section again a few more things. So within borders, you can add on a gradient onto your stroke, which is like a border, and you can change the gradient to be whatever colors you want. Let's say that you were wanting to pick specific colors, something like this. And then from here, you can adjust the gradient a bit. You can adjust the direction of the gradient. And so let's say I wanted to move the gradient to go from this side to this side, right to left. And then I could do left to right by just switching it just like that. And then let's say that I didn't love these colors and I thought, okay, this color yellow, I want to make it a little bit different color. I want to make it maybe more of a darker green, something like that. You can just play around with it. So right here, if we click, we can even add a pattern onto the top of our, either we can add it to the top of our gradient, or we can just fill it in into the inside of the rectangle. I like that. Another thing to know within properties is, let's say that I was on this rectangle that we made originally, and right now it has perfectly straight corners. If I wanted to make the corners of this square curved, I could do that by doing 20 pixels, and then that curved the edges of this square. This would change the angle of the square. So this would be flipping it horizontal, this would be flipping it vertically, which you can't tell that much for this type of image. Okay, so another thing that I want to show you really quickly is right here on the move tool within shapes. One cool thing that you can do is actually automatically switch your shapes to be centered or to the left or to the right of your canvas. So if I come over here to the rectangle tool, and if it's not perfectly centered, it just became perfectly centered. So I'm going to do that to this triangle. I'm going to do it to this one, and hopefully this one's already pretty close. It was. So just like that, I was able to align all of my shapes. I can do it from top to bottom as well. So let's say I wanted to align them from the top, and you could align it in the middle and so on. Let's go ahead and open up a couple more shapes. All right, so the next shape that we're gonna go over is the polygon shape. And I just reset my canvas to black, and I'm gonna come over here, and right here I'm gonna click on polygon. So now that I have my polygon, I'm just going to right click and drag, and this just popped up. So let's say that this polygon, I wanted to add more size. Right here under properties, I can change the amount of sides of my polygon. So that would make it into an octagon. Within the polygon shapes, you can actually make stars as well. So I'm going to show you that. You can make the star ratio right here. So let's say I wanted to make the star ratio 20%. And the way that I did that was by changing my star ratio. Here's my new star. Right now it has 8 sides. Let's say I wanted to make it, I'm gonna hide my polygon now. Let's say that I wanted to make my star have 20 sides. Type it out, 20 sides. I press enter, and just like that, I have a 20-sided star. Within these properties right here, you can really just take this slider and drag it to as many sides as you want. And that doesn't even look like a star anymore. It looks pretty cool though. That is a bit about the polygon tool. You learned that you can use the polygon tool to create shapes, and you can also use it to create stars. So right here, instead of 20, I could make it 60. And it would just change the ratio and the look of it. Before it was at 20, and this is what my new star shape is gonna look like. I can change the amount of sides and everything right here. So that is kind of a fun tool. The other thing that you can do within this tool is actually change the feather. So let's say that I wanted to go back to my properties. I can come over here to this section right here that says masks. I would click on that, and then I could feather it out. So as you can see right here, this just became really soft, and instead of it being a straight line for our stroke on the outside, it became more feathered. So that is how you change the feather within properties. I'm going to do Control Z. And so great job. You just learned already the rectangle tool, the ellipse tool, the triangle tool, the polygon tool. Another option within the shape tool is the line tool. And I don't really use this one very often, but it is an option within shapes. For some reason, I always gravitate more to the brush tool and just pressing shift rather than using the line tool. Or I would use the pen tool probably before I use this line tool in the shape section. So I'm just going to skip over that one. Okay, so now we're going to talk about custom shapes, because custom shapes are super fun to talk about. So let's go ahead and get started by looking at some of our custom shapes that we have. Let's start off by showing you this is where you would find your custom shape tool. And if it's not right here, you'd probably have to go in and find the rectangle tool and then right click down here to the custom shape tool, depending on which window workspace you're in. Let's go ahead and get started. Up here at the top, we have these custom shapes. We have flowers, boats, wild animals, and those are all fun, but let's say we want to add in some more. So what we would do is we would go to Window, come down to Shapes, click it, and then right here, this Shapes window just popped up. So let me show you the Shapes window right here. This is what the Shapes window looks like, and it just popped up. So right up here on the top, I can come click on this top section of the box and then come down to Legacy Shapes and More. And when I clicked on that, that just opened up a ton of more shapes that we can have. So when you open up these different shapes, you can have trees, forests, mountains. It's pretty cool. These all come with Photoshop. you've got people, you've got lots of different options. Oh my goodness. And even more right here as well. What I'm going to show you next is how to create your own custom shape. So you can do that in a few different ways. The main thing that you need is to make sure that your shape has a path. And so let's say that I were to take my pen tool right here and I were to sort of outline this same shape. And so let's say that the custom shapes didn't have anything that was similar to this leaf. I could just kind of outline it right here with the pen tool and create a custom path. So it's gonna I'm gonna fast forward through this. So in order to have a custom shape, you have to have a path first. And so right now, that's just what I'm doing. Okay, so once you have your shape path finished, all you have to do is come up here to edit, click edit, and then come down here to define custom shape. Now you can name your shape, press OK. I would go back into my shape tools, my create custom shape area, and then I would find my new custom shape that I just created. So I would take this and I can drag it out and I can make it whatever color I want. So just like that, I was able to create this custom shape. And so this custom shape, it is a vector shape, which is really cool. So that is one way to create your own custom shape. So on this layer, I can bring, let's say, another pattern or something like that, or color. Let's say I wanted to do a color, a gradient on the top of it. Then I can right click and I can say rasterize and then create a clipping mask and do something like that. So that is the way that I create my own custom shapes. So now we just created our own custom shape together. I taught you all about the rectangle tool, the stroke tool, the triangle tool, and I showed you how to find all of the legacy shapes that comes with Adobe. And I also showed you how to create your own custom shape together. Now you know everything that you need to know about shapes. You are an expert at shapes. Great job. I will see you in the next lecture.